Christopher German. And this is a resurrection a bit. We did a bunch of episodes prior in the what's the word for it? Primary season, but ultimately we didn't get this one interview done. And this was a very important interview because this was the interview that was really inspired me to put this program together. Back when I was at the radio station, I really wanted to interview her. And unfortunately, the time just didn't work out and we never got together. But as of late, we've reconnected and we're now in the full election season and we got a couple weeks before the election. And it's just as important to get these conversations done now as it was before, so we're going to have this conversation now. So without further ado, please let me introduce you to Rejeana Jackson, candidate for commission here in the county. And Rejeana, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I think better late than never, and this is a great opportunity to reach directly to the public, which we'll get to talking about is one of the reasons I'm running is communication to the public. And so I really thank you for the opportunity, and if I could go ahead and just give you a quick spiel about myself.
Hit your spiel, do it.
I'll do it. Okay, so my family moved here in 1986. We moved to the Basin from California and went to school here, started at Mills, Roosevelt, Ponderosa, and then graduated from KU in 98. I had a wonderful childhood here, a magical childhood. We didn't have a lot of roots here, but we had our small little family and felt really connected to the community. And the reason that I'm talking about this is because in the past 7 years ago, we brought our family back here. So after high school, graduated in 98, was heavily involved in the community and at the school, and I went to Pepperdine University, which is in California, which is Malibu, a little bougie. Which quite the culture shock for a little Oregon girl going there. So I showed up in my flannel shirt and my Birkenstocks and was met with classmates that were driving BMWs. So it was a little bit of a culture shock, but the Lord works in mysterious ways. And in my journey through college, I met my husband, who is the absolute most wonderful man. And then we started to build a life from there. So when I graduated from Pepperdine with a degree in organizational communications, and you might ask what's that? My dad used to call it my BA and BS. And so what it really is taking all the components of business, marketing, PR, interpersonal communications, interviewing skills, all of those things, and putting them atop a ticket. So it's looking at business, but from a people perspective, as opposed to just numbers. So graduated from there. I originally wanted to be a news reporter. So I worked for an NBC affiliate in the Central Coast of California, KSBY, and started out doing camera work and CGIs and things like that, a little bit of weekend reporting, but that's about as far as it went. And I quickly discovered that for longevity reasons, I was going to go back into retail. So I worked retail all through high school. That's where I started my leadership and management career, was managing the shoe department at Gottschalk's back when I was about 17 years old. So I've been in management for decades. And so when I left the NBC affiliate, I went and worked for JCPenney's, and I was a manager there. And this will really date me. I was a manager of a catalog department. So I don't know if anyone uses catalogs anymore, but JCPenney's used to have a pretty thriving catalog
I remember
department.
the JCPenney catalog. Yeah.
And so I did that, and then was quickly recruited, because I did have a degree, recruited by Target, which had an incredible executive training program that really inspired me. So was hired on by Target, became an executive, ran first a guest experience, so that's everything at the front of the store, cashiers, Starbucks, food court, all of that. So I started managing that in a store in Paso Robles on the Central Coast of California. Then I was promoted, so every 18 months, they moved me from location to location to fix broken processes. That's what my degree was in, and that's really what kind of my experience and education lended itself to. And so from there, I was moved to the Camarillo store, which is a little further south, and I ran the hardlines department. That was a broken process, and I went in and fixed that before fourth quarter. Then they moved me again, and then I moved and took over an HR process at another store. Human resources, everything from hiring, promoting, interviewing, recruiting, ensuring that the review process was done in a timely fashion, making sure everyone's pay was accurate, maintaining payroll, events, recognition of the team, all of those great things. And so I did HR for a couple of years. Then they moved me again. And then I ran the entire store in Simi Valley. So that was $50 million a year with over 200 employees, not including seasonal workers. And with that, you're in charge of everything. You're in charge of hard lines, soft lines, logistics. We were an overnight logistics process, which is, if you've never worked overnight, quite an experience. They're some of the hardiest people I've ever met in my life.
I bet,
Work overnight. And so it was great. Went through several remodels. I don't know if you've ever gone into a store that's going through a remodel. It's a learning experience for sure. Always over budget and over time. And so went through a couple of remodels. It's when they were putting in the pharmacies. It's when they were putting in the Starbucks remodels, and then when they started selling like fresh produce. Went through and did all those remodels. So I was planning on staying with Target for the rest of my life, but then a man came along, a man that I had gone to college with, who reached out to me on Facebook, and his name was Peter Jackson. And we went on our first date and then got married 2 years later. So I really saw a fork in the road. The challenge with working at big box stores is your life is not your own, especially during fourth quarter. So really back to school until January. I ate Thanksgiving dinner by myself. You spent Christmases at the store. And so I really saw a fork in the road. I could either continue working and probably have a lot of money, but be single with a lot of cats, or I could probably, finally decide to settle down. And so reconnect with Peter. We went to college together, and we got married shortly after that. And then I started working for a company. So Kohler, the faucets and toilets. Well, they have it's a huge private corporation, and they own different businesses. One that they own is a luxury furniture company called Baker. It's manufactured in North Carolina, really high-end, like $50,000 couches and things like that. And so I ran 2 of their showrooms in Los Angeles. And the reason I picked that business is because they, were closed on the weekends and they were off on holidays, and there's no Black Friday sales for expensive furniture. It is what it is. And most of our pieces could only be bought through a designer. We didn't even sell to end users.
Okay.
So with that, it gave me the experience of a brand new product line. So when you have management leadership skills, you can use that anywhere. You can use that in a big box store. You can use that in a nonprofit. You can use that on the commission. And so I took my skill set there and applied it to 2 different locations. And the really great thing about these 2 locations is they were in West Hollywood. So I had the opportunity to work with people kind of outside my normal circle. Very diverse area, very cultural area, and it gave me an opportunity to really expand my thought process in a lot of ways. And so I worked in the Pacific Design Center, and then we had a brick and mortar location that was on La Cienega, and I ran those. So 2 locations, multiple employees, very, very high ticket amount items, with very prestigious clients that weren't willing to wait for things. So it was just a different type of clientele, but again, those management skills can be applied anywhere. So worked there, and then after Peter and I had gotten married, we found out we were pregnant with our first child, and I tried to go back to work. I tried for 6 months. It broke my heart every day to leave that little guy at home. So we decided, okay, and no one was more surprised than I was that I wanted to stay. I thought I could do both, but I wanted to stay home with our little Rex, and so we decided that I was going to stay home, but you can't live off one income in LA. There's just no way. So we moved to Utah for a couple of years. My husband works for a software company, so he's always worked remotely. So we moved to Utah for a couple of years. My daughter was born, and then we ended up here back in Oregon where our smallest son was born. So now we've got 3 kids. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I've been a stay-at-home mom for the past 10 years. And raising our kids here in the Basin. They're going to school at Cross Point, which we absolutely love the community out there. We fellowship here at Calvary Church up on the hill by the Y, have a good group of friends. We're mostly homebodies. We can stay at home and focus on our family and everything. And so that's what's brought us back. We've been back for 7 years. And, I think really it wasn't until 2020. So I've always been a registered Republican. My parents were Republicans. My political journey really started, and this seems a little silly, but there's a personal reason for this. My political journey started when I was in junior high. Like, what junior high kid should be, my dad and I didn't talk very much, but we could always talk about politics. And he was a big Rush Limbaugh guy, so I would sit there in the afternoons, and we'd listen to Rush Limbaugh, and he would finally talk to me. And that was something I was going to hold on to. So that's where I first became focused, and it was more just doing something my dad thought was cool too. But then it kind of branched out from there and started to get a little bit more involved in the party. And then it really came to a head in 2020 where kind of felt out of control with what was going on in our government. It just felt like a lot of our rights were being taken away and we didn't quite understand. Now I will say, Klamath County as a whole did really well. I mean, in comparison to other counties in terms of restrictions and things like that, I think that we handled it pretty well. So I decided to get involved, and it was right about the time where they were, what was it? They were wanting us to put masks while we were outside or something like that. And I was like, okay, hold on a second. So I went and visited our local Republican Party, and I said, I'd just like to get involved. I don't understand enough. I do my civic duty. I vote every 2 to 4 years, and like most low propensity voters, then I kind of forget about it. Until you start to see what some of these positions can actually do to your life, do to your business, do to your health, then you start to pay attention. I also started to pay attention to how our local officials were guiding us through that time, what the sheriff was doing, what the commissioners were doing. That's when I started to ask more questions. I became a precinct committee person. So for those of you who don't know, precinct committee person is you're basically the liaison for your neighborhood. So I live at the Running Y, and I'm the precinct committee person for the Republicans there. You tell them about measures that are coming out, candidates, things they should be aware of. So I signed up to do that with the local Klamath County Republicans. Did that for a year, was elected to secretary, and was elected to chair. So I've just been doing that for the past couple of years, and it's allowed me to explore more avenues of the government that I really didn't have access to before. And part of that was, watching the commissioner meetings and seeing the ways they were voting and how our money was being spent. And then that led to, I've always been very passionate about election integrity, always very passionate. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle you are on. A vote means a vote means a vote. So the week prior, the commissioners in Shasta County had returned to hand counting from using the machines by request of the citizens. So I went in to talk to the commission about that. I said, we have an Oregon statute on hand. It's 184-47 or something like that, which allows for hand counting in your precinct. And so I went with a group of my PCPs, and we went to go talk to them about that. And in that conversation, I have to be honest, as a citizen, I just felt like I wasn't being heard. I felt like it was a formality to listen to our little group, whether you agree or you don't. Even folks that come in with stuff that I don't agree with, you should be allowed the time and the respect and feel like you're being heard.
Well, let me jump in here.
Sure.
Because that's, I think, one of the things that a lot of people feel about this county is that they're not being heard, and that they're not being respected, and their voices are just not being listened to, and the commission, for good or for bad, whatever they're doing, they're just not listening to us. How, as a commissioner, if you got elected, could you potentially get people to feel more engaged in the process?
Oh, absolutely. And that's one of the reasons I'm running is, especially after that meeting, I was like, you know what, I'm paying for a service here, and I'm not getting good service. And so that's how I looked at it, and looking at Klamath County as a business and as a manager, that's the role you would be stepping into, and communication is key. If we had proper communication, if we had grassroots citizen media that we could rely on, if we had a way for us to connect all of our communication using the commission, a information officer, which I think is much needed, if we're able to work with the newspaper and the elements that we do have to get the message across, I think it will eliminate, I would say, probably 80% of the issues we have here. Most of the issues we have is a combination between miscommunication, misinformation, talking in social media without getting together and talking like we are face to face, and then also kind of demonizing the other side. And so you have a swirling toilet bowl of problems here, and it's got to stop.
Yeah,
it's got to stop. The infighting between the departments has got to stop. We've got to stop suing each other. We need to start treating our citizens with dignity and respect. When they come to the commission to speak, they should be allowed ample time to speak. Some of these folks are driving in from North County. It's a 2-hour drive, and you should be listened to. And I think, and I don't want to say anything disparaging about, who's currently on the commission, but I think it could be vastly improved, and I think even they would admit that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then your shall we say, your training in fixing broken processes will
Yes.
certainly be valuable on this commission, will it not?
Yes, absolutely. And the great thing is that, yes, I am a Republican, but I will tell you this. In the 200 employees I had at Target and the over 25 very diverse employees that I had at Baker Furniture, nobody knew I was Republican.
And I would also say,
Yeah.
you know, we were talking about, we've had a bunch of conversations leading up to this interview off record, but you also talked about how you were a little bit scared about getting in this whole process and the public eye being laid upon you and all that kinds of good stuff.
My goodness.
Talk to me a bit about that.
That is absolutely right. So, being involved in this political action committee, I've always been on the other side of elections, getting other people elected, fundraising for other people, and you don't quite understand until you're in the crosshairs how awkward that can be. The two things I absolutely love about campaigning are seeing more of the county than I have before and talking to people. I have had some of the best conversations with people in Chilliquin, Bly Mountain, Chemult, you know, all these areas that I don't normally frequent. I've had the opportunity and to hear what's challenging you, what do you need from the commission, what's your biggest issue out here, and it's all the same. It's all the same. Safety, right? Law and order, okay? Infrastructure, economy, all the same.
Well, and that's, I think, something you also bring to the party here, which is development and economic development for the area here.
Yes.
That's something that I think is a major role of the commission, which to some degree they have tried to do, but
Right.
it's not necessarily been as successful as they could. What do you see as far as economic development for this county?
Right, and I think the challenge there is that, you know, people in the past have come up with big ideas, you know, so we're dealing with some big egos and big ideas, but not a lot of juice for the squeeze. I think it's simpler than that. I think it is simpler because we need to take a look at why people are leaving. I left. Why did I leave? And then I started researching that. I left because I didn't feel like there was opportunity. Now, at the time, KCC wasn't really up and running the way they were. I might have stayed, you know. So I think tying into the wonderful things that are happening at KCC, OIT, you know, the trade programs, the engineering programs. Now that OIT is a polytechnic university, I've talked to both Dr. Gutierrez and Dr. Nagy about those. And, you know, how can we get our young people to stay? Because right now we're bringing in a lot of people from other states. But do they have roots here? Why did I come back after all that time? Because I have roots here. You know, so how do we keep our young people here? We have to be easy to do business with. We have to have affordable housing, right? So if you graduate from college, nobody wants to move back in with their parents.
Right.
Right. And I'm sure we've all had to do that at some point. You know, so it's removing these obstacles for these young people to stay here so then they can plant their roots, and that's how you continue generation after generation. Now, it really depends on the industry. If we're talking the ag industry, some things are going to have to change at the federal level in order to keep those kids here, because they see their parents struggling, you know, to keep their farms and ranches going and everything with the water issues. And so, you know, that there's something there as well. I think that there needs to be employment opportunities outside of fast food. You know, there needs to be some other employment opportunities. But in order to bring, and the funny thing, it's all kind of encompassed, because in order to bring business here, we need to be safe. We need to be safe.
Yeah.
So I think the top of this totem pole has to be law and order. The sheriff's department has to be adequately funded for them to do their jobs. Once we feel safe, once citizens feel safe, once the organizations or businesses that want to come in can do the analytics and determine that we are a safe community, I think they'll be willing to invest. But that has to be top of ticket.
Yeah.
You know, if you can just take a look at, you know, the crime that we had this summer. I mean, you know, 2 horrific murders, attempted murders, you know. Does anybody really want to open a business here? So those need to be taken, you know, to looked at as well. So it's a multifaceted approach. I think there's not just one big answer. So I think the challenge is when people come into the commission with their, I'm going to solve everything with this one, you know, project. You also need to understand you have 2 other people you need to convince on that commission, right? So it's a team.
Yeah.
On top of that, you have 24 department heads. I'm telling you, I spent my entire summer meeting with those department heads almost every week. I didn't get to all of them.
Yeah.
That's huge. That's a lot of people employed by the county. A lot of people. So I also believe that we have got to balance the budget. I'm a big, being conservative, I am for limited government. I am for, they at least have to do the staples. Keep us safe, infrastructure. Everything else is a bonus after that. If we don't have those two things, you can't make the rest of this work. We can't put more money into the library if people are breaking into the library, or breaking into the museum like they did about a month or so ago. We've got to get the safety part down. We've got to get the infrastructure part down.
Well, speaking of safety, not least of which, one of the things I've been working on the side project here is trying to figure out how to get the sheriff to be able to be more equitably applied to the whole county. But speaking of the sheriff, you just got a phenomenal endorsement from Sheriff Kaber this weekend, did you not?
I did, and I was so surprised, and Kaber has been wonderful, has been incredibly supportive. The sheriff's family has been very supportive of me, and we'd actually spoken this weekend, and I had no idea, so I woke up to a wonderful surprise in the newspaper yesterday, and lots of congratulations. So I'm very humbled by that support, and wholeheartedly accept it, and know that they are, the Kaber family has been through a lot, I think, in the past year. So for him to take a step back and want to encourage those that are following behind him, I think is a very noble move.
Well, I've had some conversations with Sheriff Kaber since he's been looking at his way out of here, and he's not necessarily going to leave the area, but are there any ways the commission could tap upon his experience here to try and see about maybe getting more sheriff accountability around the area and to growing the sheriff's department so that it could actually protect the entire county?
Absolutely, and I think it would, we would be doing ourselves a disservice to in any way cut him off from, I think that there is an opportunity for really well put together advisory committees. Right now I'm actually reaching out to people for a mental health advisory committee that I would like. So in the areas where I feel are maybe a weakness for me, so let's say, ag and water, I would pull in some people for that. And then law and order as well. After his, 35 years serving the community, there's a lot of experience there that needs to be tapped into. And I think allowing all of this outside noise to impact that, I think is childish. Yeah, I think it's childish. So absolutely, I see a place for Sheriff Kaber in the future. These advisory boards, oftentimes politicians think they have all the answers. They know everything. There's a little bit of narcissistic tendencies in there, so I'm not a politician. To be quite honest, the idea of working for the government is a little odd for me. I've never worked for the government, but I see a need, and I know that I have a skill set that will fill it perfectly. I have the experience, I have the temperament, I get along with everybody, and but there's a strength to me as well. Again, I've got 3 kids. I'm fully invested in this. I want this county to thrive for everyone, not just Republicans or Democrats or anything like that, for everyone. We're all part of this community. I've developed a great friendship with the Democratic chair, Jean and Rejeana, we were laughing. And so, and she wants the same things, so I said, how can we work together with the community in tow, and that's that big communication piece we were talking about, in order to bring them along, because as shareholders in the business, they should have access to the information. It should be easy to find. They should feel welcome to the commissioner meetings, so, not sure if that answered your question, but. Well,
yeah, it does. But it also brings up another aspect of this, and I've heard from some folks, I don't think it's overwhelming, but it's definitely an issue that needs to be brought up, is that the current people on the commission, specifically Dave Hensley and specifically, I'm forgetting his name now, wow.
DeGroot.
Yeah, Mr. DeGroot. They've really become buddy-buddy. And it was part of this 3-legged stool where it was always them against Miss Minty.
Yeah.
And by adding you to that mix there, Hensley's not going to be around the next year, there could be, I think, a little bit more fair exchange of ideas, I would say. And a lot of people are thinking that if Mr. Nichols gets on there, it's going to be more of the Hensley DeGroot hour. Whereas if you're there, it could be much more balanced. What do you have to say about that?
I will say, of the 3 of them, Commissioner Minty has been the most helpful. She has been accessible. She has answered all my questions. She's passed along information that she thought was pertinent to both myself and my opponent going forward. Hey, in January this is going to happen, so you have a heads up. She's the only one doing that, at least for me. So for me, we might not always agree on policy and everything, but she's the one that has stepped up and shown the kindness and cares enough to assist with whoever's going to take that position.
We would have 2 former television personalities on the commission. That has to do something for communication, doesn't it?
Well, and interesting too is I was sitting in a planning commission meeting last month, and in that boardroom, do you see all the pictures on the wall? Mm-hmm. So I was sitting there looking at all those pictures, and I was wondering, gosh, we could use a couple more women up there. Mm-hmm. And so that's when I looked into, we've never had 2 women on the commission.
Really?
Elected, never.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
That is amazing.
I think there was maybe one appointed at some point, but no, there's never been 2 women.
Interesting.
Isn't that interesting?
Wow.
And so, I would say I have a friendly working relationship with all 3 of the current commissioners. There's, I think they would all talk to me if I went in, but Commissioner Minty's the only one that has gone above and beyond.
Well then, how can people get in touch with you? There's only a couple more weeks till the election, but if people want
44 more days.
44 more days. You know the exact time, and you probably know the hours too, don't you? But so if somebody wants to get behind your candidacy, if somebody says, you know what, I need to help you win, how can they do so? Okay,
wonderful. So I have a website, RejeanaJackson.com. You can also find me on my Facebook page, which is Rejeana for Klamath County Commissioner. You can my name is uniquely spelled, so if you put my name in there, it'll come up with lots of stuff. So, and then you can reach me, you can email me, you can call me. I am available. I am here, and that's also something I plan to do when I'm in the commission. It is a full-time job. You will know where I am every day. Every day, I commit to transparency in my scheduling.
Well, that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for joining in today, because these are the conversations we have to have if we're going to truly open up the government here, truly understand where we're all coming from. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
And this has been Conversations, Coffee with the Candidates. Christopher German here coming to you. I'm sorry, I'm a little sick. I just got back from Alaska, and I'm a little bit falling over myself today, but thank you so much for being here today. And thank you for watching. Thanks to the Waffle Hut, home of the Smash Burger. They have been so generous to give us a space once again. And if any of the other candidates would like to get in on this and have a conversation, I would like to open the door to that as well, because this is what we're doing, folks. We're trying to get everybody to understand what's happening around here. And the best way to do it, since we don't have a television station in Klamath County anymore, let's do this on YouTube then. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. For Sunshine News, I'm Christopher Jones.